Conversations from the Cave is a raw self-help podcast dedicated to discussing men's issues. From pornography to parenting, from religion to real life, from learning to loving. We discuss the real issues that affect real men every day. Join us each week for powerful. Conversations from the Cave is a raw self-help podcast dedicated to discussing men's issues. From pornography to parenting, from religion to real life, from learning to loving. We discuss the real issues that affect real men every day. Join us each week for powerful, revealing Conversations from the Cave. Now your host, Kirk Kennedy.
Happy Sunday to you. I am your host, Kirk Kennedy, and it is a pleasure to come into your iPods, your iDevices, and your Android phones via the power of digital media. Today, I'd like to welcome you to Conversations from the Cave. Today, we're going to do a live show, and we're going to take some time to talk about something that I think is extremely important, and that is motivation, personal motivation. Are you living up to your fullest potential? Are you the full complement of what you were created to be? I am going to talk a little bit about some things that are very personal, as opposed to having a group discussion. I decided to talk a little bit more directly, one-on-one with you, the listener. Today is the first day of the rest of your life. You hear that adage thrown around a lot. But today, I think for me, it is a critical turning point in the way that I approach my life. So I'm going to share what I've learned this week with you. Today, I should say, I guess I learned it last week, but I'm going to share it with you today. Today is unique in that I have decided to give myself a gut check, and I encourage each and every one of you to do the same. When you take into account your life, and when you look over the length and breadth of it, you wonder, is this the course that I plan to stay on for the rest of my life? Is this all that I can be? Is this all that life offers? Or can life offer me so much more? Can I choose to make different choices today that will allow other doors and other opportunities to become a reality in my life? I was looking back over last week, and in particular, I was studying the life of a very, very inspirational man. His name is David Goggins, and he is, if you Google him and if you've heard anything about his story, he's gone through almost every branch of the military's Hell Week for their elite fighter programs, and he has passed each one of those and come back for more. I don't know if this man is just a glutton for punishment, but his story bears discussion because what he has done, very few people can do. He has surpassed the most grueling of human experiences and chosen to do it in every branch of the military and done it 3 times. This, to me, says that this man has one thing that is consistently driving him, and that is that his body will not overrule his mind. His discipline and his attention to focusing on a goal, and that it will be his victory, will be the only thing left of that challenge. to me, defines what true masculinity is. True driven men have a heart of drive, who are willing to get up from circumstances that are setbacks. I know that oftentimes it's easier to take the method of course, and David Goggins made a comment that I think speaks to the heart of what many of us do. He said, if you feel that the thing that you want to do most, or the thing that you want to accomplish most, will happen with no effort, you'll be sorely disappointed. Things that you want desperately and things that you want to excel at desperately require hard work. You'll have to do something that is uncomfortable. It's a change. It's a habit. It's something new that has to be developed in you. It is clear that he understands that the consistency of a mindset and consistency of action builds not only the dream, but it builds character along the way. In the scriptures, the book of Paul says, I press towards the mark of this high calling, meaning press. Pressing is pushing at something and continuing in spite of adversity, never willing to give up until that goal surrenders to your hand. Driving and pushing for something so hard that there's nothing more important in your life than reaching that goal. We marvel at the discipline of the martial arts, but there were many times where there were many blows that had to be accepted as a result of training for that martial art. We look at extremely talented musicians, those ones who are at the tops of their skill set, guitarists who can play hundreds of notes in minutes, and we marvel and we say, yeah, that's great, Joe Blow can do that. But they don't think about how many hours it took and how many sore fingers and how many strings had to be purchased and how many days of blood, sweat, and tears went into that moment that you enjoyed in a mere 3 minutes. We oftentimes minimize the brilliance of a performance because we don't understand or have not endured the level of practice that was required to render that performance. Music and looped music, for example, has become so popular, and people can click with a mouse without having any skill to play an instrument. We sometimes minimize the accomplishments of others because they don't measure up. We have haters in our lives sometimes who say, what you're doing is, it's not as good as what I'm doing. What's interesting about that is the fact that they were aware that you were doing something should be enough to drive you to continue on. I've become very passionate about this particular discussion because I've seen it in my own life. I've seen a lot of times when it would be easy to simply say, I don't have help, and therefore I won't move forward. I remember moving into my current location where I work, and I remember it was about 3-4 o'clock in the morning, and I had a U-Haul truck full of office equipment, and I had nobody to help me move it in. Not a soul. Not one soul. And I remember in the cold January morning when there was no car parked in the parking lot, I remember looking at the insurmountable task of a full U-Haul and all the gear and equipment of a medical office needing to be unloaded with just me. And the return of the truck was absolutely imminent at 9 o'clock. And I remember thinking there's no possible way that I'll be able to do this. But by the grace of God, I began saying, I'll just move one thing, just this one thing. If I can get a few things in before 9 o'clock, it'll be okay. So I started with some of the big things, and I carted them in and propped the door open and struggled with the door and got them in, and wasn't pretty, but I got them in. So then I saw, I've got some big things. Well, let me just try these smaller things, these mid-sized things. And So the hours began to go by, and one thing after another, and I continued, my muscles aching, my lungs hurting because it was so cold. And I remember thinking, this isn't glamorous, but this is the first step towards my dream. This is not what I want to be doing, but this is what I must be doing in order to have the life I wish to pass on to my children. This is the goal. This will fall at my hand. I remember the next step when I saw that the truck was getting a little bit more empty, and I started thinking, well, I can take some of these smaller items in. They're not so heavy. My arms are tired, but I can carry just a few of these. Let me just start with a few of these. And I started carting them in and carting the next thing and carting the next thing and carting the next thing in until that truck was empty. And I remember standing at the door in the cold with that last item coming off of that truck, and as the sun had come up, and I remember I had 15 minutes to return that truck before I was charged for the next day. And I remember standing in that moment and saying, that goal fell at my hand. Nobody else was there. No one knew about it until today. But that moment was mine. That moment I stood there realizing that it didn't take an army. It took one man and determination and a God-given drive to continue pushing past your needs, pushing past your wants, pushing past the thirst, pushing past the pain. And every goal that you have in life, gentlemen, requires a gut check. Every goal will have those defining moments. Every goal will give you a chance to test your mettle. It is the man who truly wants something, who's willing to stay up all night to fight for it. It's the man who truly wants that piece of that dream to become a reality, that pushes past the pain of the setbacks, pushes past the haters who are willing to throw stones, pushes past the critics who are willing to stand on the sidelines and willing to cast judgments. And don't forget, gentlemen, that along the journey, as you become more successful, you will find the moochers. Don't be one of them. The moochers, the ones who want you, with your drive and your determination and with your presence, to buy into their dream, a dream they haven't sold out for. Take the time, gentlemen, to begin the process of living who you should be. Mind your business. Get your drive and determination going. Take that first step in looking your dreams, your fears, your pain in the eye and begin to grasp that life that you want. Men don't generally live as long as women do. As a general rule, men die oftentimes sooner when they're in a marriage. And what's interesting is that oftentimes those men die because of loss of their dreams. They've died inside long before their physical body wears out. I believe it's infinitely more important right now to speak to men's hearts and to tell you that you are doing your family a disservice if you don't live your dream. There are many who disagree and say, you need to put food on the table. But how can you continue to put food on the table if you can't live? If you don't care for yourself, to begin caring for yourself and loving yourself, how can you love your wife in the fullest, to the fullest? How can you give her the very best you if you're not the very best you yet? I encourage men to take some time and some introspection to push within yourself and see what you're really made of. Know your purpose. Determine in your heart what is needed for your life to go in the direction that it needs to go into. Many times it's far easier to say, well, I've suffered a setback, and because of that setback, I've just got to do this now. Or I'm going to give up on this. I'm going to go ahead and just work for the man. This is for, and fill in the blank. I'm doing this because, fill in the blank. It's far easier to chicken